Alright guys, real quick, I forgot some more safety stuff. And by the way, welcome to the second part of this tutorial in this video. So, welding gloves or appropriate gloves for blacksmithing, where you can, handle a little bit of heat through the gloves. Meaning you're not going to be grabbing super red hot steel with these. But the most dangerous color of steel when it comes to forging anything is black, because it can still be above 500 degrees and do some significant damage. With that being said, cool your tongs off periodically. That's another thing. But we're going to show you a little bit about stance real quick here, and then we'll get to hitting some steel. That's what y'all are here for. I'm a cursed lefty, so I want you guys to just pay attention to my legs, okay? Which you can kind of see on video. So when I'm forging, my left leg, because again I'm a lefty, is going to be part reverse for you right-handed individuals. But this is the hand that I'm using to swing my hammer. I'm going to have my left leg, or for you your right leg, sticking out that way and used as a balance. So my legs are about shoulder width apart, kind of almost in a fighting stance, and my tongs are here. Okay, I don't want to be way down here hitting, and I don't want to be way up here. I'm kind of in the middle. You really want your anvil to be about at your waistline, which mine's slightly above it, but it's not in the dangerous area. And you want a good range of motion. So with a small hammer here, we're just going to practice, okay? I don't believe in hitting your hammer or your anvil with nothing on it. It's bad for it. But, so this is just a cold piece of steel. Actually, you know what? Even better. We'll use a piece of wood. So pretend this is a tong and a piece of steel, okay? Don't be super down or up the neck of the hammer. Be closer to the head, okay? Looking for that rebound, okay? See how I'm relaxed? So when I'm coming down, I'm not extending my wrist. I'm standing straight up, my back straight. I'm allowing that connection point. Allowing that rebound to take effect. I'm not hitting over here, I'm not hitting over here, I'm hitting right in this area right here on the end. Let's hit some steel. Alright y'all, so we're going to do some voiceover on this video. So before you see steel on the anvil, you're going to see a diagram pop up, and it says first heat, second heat. And this is important because to control the tip and the flow of how the spine goes, I'm going to start at the tip and work my way up. The second heat, I'm going to do the opposite. And here, you see I'm going to be hitting flats called half facing, which I'll talk about as we go. So as I said, I'm starting at the tip here of our steel, and I'm basically controlling the flow of that. And you have to remember, when you're hitting steel, you're thickening it. So as I'm hitting the spine, technically is what this is, and forming the tip, it's thickening the steel out, which is going to control how it's tapered eventually. But you can also see I'm not letting a lot of heat. I'm keeping it hot. I'm not letting it get super cold, because especially with 1095, and I really encourage you guys not to start with that. It's important to keep your steel hot. So heat 2, I'm going to start near where that apex of the spine is, because this is also going to flow and help control the flow of that second narrow towards the back, because the traditional Seax has a smaller narrow that's kind of thicker, and then the second narrow towards the tip is going to be thinner. And as I said, I'm hitting the flats here on the sides, and I call it flats. I have to be careful using terminology, because some of you don't understand it if you're beginning. It's on the very edges of the steel, and you want to half face that. That means that half of your hammer is on the steel and half of it is over the anvil. And right here, as I said, you're thickening the steel, which is important to see, because if you do it too much and you don't transition to another area like the back of the spine, as you're about to see in this next heat, or not this one but the coming one, I'm going to start to transition drawing the steel out. But as I said, I'm working on controlling where I want the apex of the spine to be, flowing to the tip. And again, it's always important to hit your flats, because you want to control that thickness. You also don't want it to turn into a taco, which is where the two corners of the steel will start to create a U shape and fold. You'll see here later, I show you to correct that, because it's inevitable and it's going to happen. So let's go ahead and get another heat. I'm showing you the thickness again there and how everything is being controlled. And this is where I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to start working on drawing it out before I start really focusing on that backside of the spine narrowing, because you want to get length before you start to do your forming. And that's what I'm kind of motioning with that with the hammer there, is I'm starting to draw it out. And you can see very closely, if you look at the steel, it is starting to bend in, and that's what I'm talking about, is that U, or that taco. And I have really good control of the hammer here, again hitting the flats. As long as you hit, opposite sides, you don't necessarily have to hit, let's say, the left side and then flip it and hit the left side and do the right side and the right side. You can do it on the same side and then flip it. Just make sure you do that. That'll help you have control of how you're thickening out the steel and that U that's really starting to take place now. Try to keep your hammer, your steel flat as possible. When it's starting to U like that, it kind of bounces around. But you can see that I'm making the steel move to me, keeping the hammer at the center of that anvil. You don't want to pull your hammer to the part of steel you're hitting, if that makes sense. You want to move the steel and let the hammer just do its job. Your target is always the center of that center anvil face. And again, I'm hitting the flats, keeping it hot. Now we're a little bit further away, and you can see that U, as I was talking about earlier, and this is what I mean by half facing. And if you want to pause this, you can, but you want to work up the one side and really take your time doing this. You don't want to have your hammer completely on the steel, because what you're doing is you're essentially pinching the steel. And if you actually look closely at it, it'll have little ridges and buildups where the steel was once completely flat. Now it has, where you can see your hammer is actually indenting the steel, which is moving material. So what you're trying to do now is flatten that back out, which in turn is widening out the steel. And always, I haven't talked about this yet, clean your steel as much as you possibly can. It'll have a better turnout. And again, we're doing the flats right now, if you can catch on my terminology. But I'm really taking my time and using this heat, and you want to do this a few times when you're drawing out your blade, and that's what we're doing. As I said, we're starting to try to get some length before we start the shaping of the back of the spine. And you can see I flattened that out, and that is why you want to do that. Now you can see the other problem is the steel is kind of bending, but we will address that later. Now I am starting to measure out basically what I want to draw it to, which I mark a 7-inch and an 8-inch. 8-inch is kind of my maximum, and you want to mark, in my opinion, 2 different measurements an inch apart, because as you're drawing it out, you may change your mind to, okay, I want it a little bit thicker for the actual blade, or you want it thinner. And if you do 7 inches, you're going to have a thicker blade. If you do 8 inches, it's going to be a little bit more skinnier or narrower. And you'll see here in the next part, I chose to go to the 8 inches, but that's going to be in part 3. Anyways, guys, this is part 2. Enjoy part 3. All right, guys, that concludes part 2. But I encourage you to continue watching, because what you see on the anvil right now will turn into what I have in my hand. All right, so remember 2 lessons here. All right, let the anvil teach you, not defeat you. A good bladesmith does 90% or more on the anvil than they do on the grinder. And I guess actually a 3rd lesson, learn to move steel, and that's what I'm showing you guys here. So continue watching. Let's continue making the Seax and have some fun. My name is Nathaniel Wenger. Born in Ohio, raised in Colorado. Being a bladesmith for 7 years, I can tell you, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here, but I'm chasing quality products for the end user and or for custom orders for my clients that make sense to what they're trying to use it for. In the time of bladesmithing, I've learned that 90% on the anvil means 90% less time on the grinder. Everything is hypothetical until sharpened and then sheathed. And if I truly want something unique and quality, handmade is the way to do it. Welcome, Colorado Custom Leather and Blades.